Scheer. You have the floor for 6 minutes. Well, thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you to all the witnesses. A lot of great topics covered, and unfortunately, we probably won't have time to go into depth in everything you raised, but hopefully we can unpack a little bit of some of the points that you brought up. I just wanted to give Ms. Whiteside an opportunity because she had flagged it as a topic that she was hoping that she could get into a little bit more explanation of during the Q&A. You mentioned that one of the things that you were concerned about, one of the things you wanted to talk a little bit more about was the concept of asset recycling. And so I just maybe would give this opportunity to you to explore that a little bit more with the committee. Ms. Whiteside.
Thank you. If you don't mind, I'll just read from my notes a little bit just to make sure I get the timeline right. So in terms of what is asset recycling, just in case you're unfamiliar with it, basically it can involve several things. Mainly it refers to disposing of so-called legacy assets in order to raise revenue that's needed for additional infrastructure. Okay, so maybe in and of itself, that's not anything particularly new or unique, but it then tends to take two forms, and one applies more to Canada than the other. One form is like just kind of straight up asset monetization, which usually occurs in, let's say, fiscally distressed circumstances, cities like Chicago or Detroit, that basically sort of scan their public portfolios and turn things like revenue from public parking meters, public parking lots, that type of thing, into streams of kind of investable funds that then they take those lump sum payments that they receive from private investors and try to pay down debt, reclaim some kind of investment grade interest rate, or credit rating, pardon me, to get a better interest rate. But the form of asset recycling that might apply more readily in Canada, and this is where I just want to refer to my notes to remind myself of the timeline, is one that it appears the Liberals had looked into and are probably following off of the Australian model, where basically assets, profitable or potentially profitable public sector assets, are disposed of to private investors in order to generate the revenue that's needed to fund new P3 infrastructure. In the case of Australia, it's actually, there's a fiscal carrot that's sort of provided by the Commonwealth or the federal government there. If their states dispose of legacy assets and use that money to develop P3s, the central government, the Commonwealth government, will give them 15% on top of that. And in Canada, it looks like in 2016, the federal government hired various, let's say, bankers or aspects of kind of global finance to look into whether they could or would or should maybe engage in asset recycling in terms of privatizing federal port assets and privatizing airports. And I don't know exactly what happened to that. You guys would be in a better position than me to figure that out. But it does look like that's on hiatus for now, at least. I know there was some dissent, at least within the kind of the airport, like the federal boards that oversee airports. Some were maybe more for this option, some weren't. In any case, this remains a concern for me. I hope for Canadians in general, I would assume so. Because essentially what it does is in exchange for lump sum upfront remuneration, it gives up, it cedes control rights, decision making over really important assets, ports, airports, this sort of thing. In the case of Chicago and Detroit, parking meters, that type of thing. So it does that, and then it tethers the use of those funds to P3. So it's kind of like a double whammy. And I mean, the Canada Infrastructure Bank purports that it's evidence-based, and these types of policy maneuvers aren't necessarily seeking out, evidence-based solutions. They kind of start with a presumption, or it's like a solution in search of a problem. So thank you, okay. Mr. Scheer.
Yeah, no, thank you. Maybe one very quick follow-up. When this type of option is pursued by governments, are these assets relinquished in perpetuity? Is it usually, for like a 25-year cycle, or what kind of timelines are usually involved?
Yeah, thanks. So it does depend. Typically, like in the case of some of these distressed cities that I was mentioning, it could be 99 years, it could be 50 years. These are typically, though, agreements that take place over the course of, multiple generations. So effectively in perpetuity. I haven't seen an example where it's fully relinquished though, but like 99 years is not uncommon.
Okay, well, thanks very much for that clarification. I wanted to also ask Ms. Van Buren a question about, from her perspective, the issue of lapsed funds. You know, I think you flagged in your comments that that the dollar amounts that this government uses to announce are often not in line with the yearly spending. So, can you maybe speak to that a little bit about the what your stakeholders, what your the people that you work with are seeing on that, and if you have any idea as to the cause of that, you know, what are the barriers? We hear a lot from municipalities that applications are sitting on desks and money's not getting out the door, shovels aren't getting in the ground. Can you maybe speak to that a little bit?
Ms. Van Buren?
Thank you very much for the question. Thank you very much for the question. The Government of Canada has a great resource, the Infrastructure Progress Tracker, and you can see province by province how the funds are or aren't flowing. And it's pretty dismal right now. If you look at provinces like Ontario, there's something like $8 billion that still hasn't flown from 2018 commitments. BC is also very much underserved, most of Atlantic Canada. Alberta is actually one of the better ones at maybe 80 to 90% of the commitments. So, you know, where's the blockage? Well, what we are hearing is that the aspirations of the federal government and the way the buckets are designed are not flexible, necessarily meet the needs of the communities. Ms. Bowl talked about, you know, what are the needs of the communities? That should be the driving force, and then the infrastructure flows. And that's one of the issues that we're seeing is that, you know, in you know, some provinces, Saskatchewan or you know, let's say Kelowna, you just don't need mass transit. So that funding cannot be spent because it just doesn't make sense for those communities, but they might need curbs, they might need community centers. So those are some of the reasons where we're seeing some blockages.
Thank you, Ms. Van Buren. Thank you, Mr. Scheer.